Making a sequel is a difficult thing to do. I don't think there's a much more bigger weight on you than making a sequel, and making the sequel as good as the first one. I'm Vest Guy, and welcome to Vest Top 5. Today we're going to be talking about some of the worst sequels ever made. Some of them are more known, and some of them are lesser known sequels to some semi-hits. Number 5 is a film that everyone was excited for, myself included, and it came out in 2003, and it was a sequel to The Matrix. I'm including both sequels that came out in the same year, Matrix Reloaded and Revolution, since they were shot back to back. To me, it's just one big film. Matrix Reloaded, while it does have great action sequences and some decent special effects for the time, the movie itself is very clunky, a lot of expositional dialogue, a lot of sequences that don't make much sense or add anything to the story. It actually confuses us even more. We were looking for answers that were left behind from the first film, and it just made it worse. Revolutions is just as bad or even worse than Matrix Reloaded, being that it closes everything supposedly in a nice little, bow, but it really doesn't. It just makes things more complicated. There's questions that are brought up, like there was more than one Zion before that was destroyed. The story with the architect, like where did he come from? Who created him? There's all these things I never answered, and to me, it's one of those sequels that just doesn't hold up very well.
But we got the albino twins from that.
Does anybody remember them?
I do.
Just you.
Number one albino fan.
Oh yeah.
Are
you gonna get a shirt that says number one albino fan?
I will get that shirt printed.
So number 4 is a movie that was so bad that Keanu Reeves did not come back for it. And that movie is Speed 2 Cruise Control. Speed was a big hit in 1994. So much of a big hit that people called it Die Hard on a Bus. It was one of those trends, like every film that came out in the 90s was either Die Hard on a boat, Under Siege. And then we had another Die Hard on a boat, Speed 2 Cruise Control. Only this time it stars Sandra Bullock, who was the co-star of the first film. This movie has one of the worst villains played by Willem Dafoe. It's so over the top. It just is really, really stupid. Sure, some of the effects still look okay because they use practical effects in certain sequences, but the story makes very little to no sense. You can tell Sandra Bullock is here just for the paycheck, and I do not blame her one bit. Number 3 is a sequel that a lot of people walked out, and I don't blame them. And that movie is Exorcist II, The Heretic. This was released a few years after the original Exorcist, which is a smash hit. A lot of people walked out of the first Exorcist. They fainted. They were just talking about it for many, many weeks. And this is before people could watch things on TV of that nature. This is one of the first films to be so, or not over the top, but more like sincere and just gross out in terms of the taboo topic of exorcism. But part 2, instead of being a continuation of how scary and atmospheric the first one was, is really just a clunker of a mess. Just a bunch of nonsense. Linda Blair does return, but her story makes no sense here. It involves her and this other priest doing this like psychotherapy thing, and there's some flashback sequences with Father Merrin, and they're just very, very cartoony. They do not work at all. Number 2 is a movie that I remember seeing when I was a kid, the first one and the second one, and I recall going to Blockbuster, seeing the VHS tape there, and there was a deal that you could buy 2 movies and get one free, and I picked it up saying, let me get this. And that movie was called Black Mask 2 City of Masks. It's a sequel to a film starring Jet Li called Black Mask, where Jet Li plays this superhero that wears a black mask. It's very simple, but it has a lot of cool choreography, a lot of cool action sequences. The sequel is none of that. A lot of really bad CGI. The reminiscence is like not even PlayStation. It looks like something from N64. There's a lizard in this film. The character's name is supposed to be the same character from the first one, but he has a different name. There's some villains that were never even mentioned. It just feels so cartoony to the point that it just threw me off. I couldn't even finish it. To this day, I've never finished Black Mask City of Masks. Number 1 is a sequel to a movie that came out in 1992. The movie is Lawnmower Man 2, Job's War. The first film was called Lawnmower Man, which was an adaptation of a short story from Stephen King. The film was actually pretty decent. Had great visual effects for its time. It came out, I think, a year before Jurassic Park. It stars Pierce Brosnan and Jeff Fahey. Pierce Brosnan plays a guy who creates a virtual reality that can actually improve the intelligence of Jeff Fahey's character. Jeff Fahey's character in part 1 ends up stuck in virtual reality, and in part 2 he comes back to create war, and it just is so stupid. Jeff Fahey did not return. The visual effects look even worse. It was rated PG-13, and it went straight to video. Tells you how bad this movie is. Not to say there's not any good movies that are released straight to video, but this one wasn't one of them. So this is the top 5 worst sequels of all time. I'm Best Guy, and this is Best Top 5, and you can get jiggy with it. So this was Best Top 5, I'm Best Guy, and you can go fuck your mother.
I think that's too much.
It's too much, I know.
Alright, good.